In recent years, media giants began asking some Americans a question. Do you see yourself reflected in the news? The topic was especially popular at the height of the Black Lives Matter protests. It was part of a hand wringing phenomenon in which the media was addressing its own failure to adequately represent members of minority groups, although they only really meant some minority groups. The CEO of NPR in 2020, John Lansing, put out a statement saying that he and other leaders in public media, quote, must be aware of how we ourselves have benefited from white privilege in our careers. We must understand the unconscious bias we bring to our work and interactions, and we must commit ourselves, body and soul, to profound changes in ourselves and our institutions. The Reuters Institute put out a big study lamenting that the media was seen to be representing groups of people, including people from minority ethnic groups, less fairly. Whether things have gotten better since then is a subjective question, but I can tell you this much for sure. Many of you have told me that you don't see yourselves reflected in the media. In preparing this episode, I considered the question for myself for the first time, and the answer was clear. Definitely not. People like me are virtually nowhere to be found. First of all, just me as a person who cares about truth above partisan games. As you know, the media does not speak to us in general. But since news executives have been focusing so much on minority status, I can say that as a member of a minority group myself, I'm not reflected. Because when it comes to the tiny group that I'm a part of, big media have no interest in what we're actually like. They only want to hear from the token few who support hate movements against us. My guest today saw that problem and decided to create a space for people whose stories are not being heard. Jonah Platt has a background in entertainment. On his show, he invites celebrities and others to speak openly about being Jewish. That's the title. These are folks whose positions on issues and commitment to doing the right thing and living well represent the overwhelming majority of Jewish Americans. The data proves it. His goal is to show the community as it really is.
Most people on planet Earth have never met and will never meet a Jew. And the only thing they know is whatever 12 seconds of the news they catch, or what they see in a movie or in a TV show, or what they hear the pundits they listen to on podcasts or whatever saying about it.
It's true. In the US alone, 45% of adults don't personally know anyone Jewish. The media's representations cause great damage. Coming up, you'll hear from one of the celebrities who was on his show. Plus, I'll explain how the media gets something exactly backward, worries about cancellation. A movie star and a former pop star prove it. But first, Anthony Fauci has been back in the news. The chief scientist who advised the U.S. government on the COVID response is facing new criticism, and so are a couple of figures from my old stomping grounds, CNN, for their personal relationships with him. This story shows what happens when the media fails to do its job and loses America's trust. All that and more coming up on They Stand Corrected. Hello and welcome. So great to have you here. My name is Josh Lebs, and this is the podcast that shows the media that they stand corrected. It is so great to have you here. At the top of the show, I always like to share messages from paid subscribers to the newsletter, folks who are making this show possible. I have been getting a lot of amazing responses to last week's episode, including the discussion of the Committee to Protect Journalists. They put out this crazy statement justifying their decision to count members of terrorist groups as journalists. It's so wrong and unethical. One great message I got was from supporter Cecilia Schmieder. She wrote, you neatly dissect the weird, illogical pretzel CPJ came out with to try to cover their ass. They seem to have based it on the classic defense, my dog didn't bite you, my dog is nice and doesn't bite, and I don't have a dog. She also made this point. She said, I wonder if J.D. Vance's trailer had been hit while he was a military journalist, would he have been listed by the CPJ. She made a really important point there that military journalists are combatants, and yet the CPJ insists on calling members of terrorist groups journalists. And that is how you get all these fake numbers of alleged quote unquote journalists being killed by Israel. The media, of course, has not corrected its previous reporting, and it has continued to go blindly by the CPJ in making its claims. I'm starting off today with something that's been in the news lately. Anthony Fauci, the chief scientist who advised the US government under Trump and then Biden in the COVID response, he has been facing a great deal of criticism, particularly from Republicans. One of them, Senator Rand Paul, managed to put together Fauci's diary entries from the days of COVID. And apparently he did this by getting computer servers. Senator Rand Paul published these things, and throughout them, Fauci writes a lot about all the media attention he's getting. He seems very caught up with the idea of fame and feeling famous and being famous. He seems to really be soaking up all that attention, although at times he also says it made him uncomfortable. He has not been making comments about all this. He says that Senator Rand Paul's effort is to get him to say something that will incriminate him. So when there was a Senate hearing the other day, he pleaded the fifth. He did not comment. So there's no further context from him on what he was thinking and feeling throughout that experience. Part of the big complaint here is that big media lionized him, glorified him. And that is true. A Wall Street Journal column by editorial board member Joseph C. Sternberg is headlined, "How the Media Fame Machine Created Anthony Fauci." Here's a clip from that.
One starts to sense Dr. Fauci took on such a domineering role in American public life, mainly because journalists found him so convenient to their broader resistance to Mr. Trump. A more reflective press corps might ask whether they merely reported the Fauci news or created it.
Sure, the media's failure to self-reflect is a key theme of this show. The absolute unwillingness to stop and learn lessons, which characterizes much of the media most of the time. And we can see the high stakes of problems like that in this story. There are legitimate criticisms, legitimate concerns about certain science officials, Fauci himself, and the media downplaying some voices during COVID, people who said that some of the precautions that officials were calling for were not necessary and could do damage in some ways in the long run. Questions about suppressing the reports that COVID originated from a lab leak instead of just jumping from animals to humans. And what we can see, looking back, is the media's two-dimensional systems playing out. I've talked to you before about the drama triangle, how the media turns almost everything into simplistic narratives: victim, villain, hero. And that was absolutely the case, especially in the early days of COVID. It was Fauci as hero, Trump as villain, and people dying from the illness as victims. And the way the media works, when information doesn't fit neatly into those paradigms, they often ignore it or downplay it. To be clear, it's no better over on right-wing media. There it was Fauci and science officials and China as villain, Trump and people speaking out against COVID shutdowns and stuff as heroes, and people who were being forced to take these precautions as victims. When your coverage is designed around these simplistic paradigms, you downplay or ignore information, and especially in this era when people are just getting little bits of information from sound bites or headlines, all the complexities can disappear. Now, amid all this, we see in these diaries that Fauci was getting support from some mainstream journalists. Here is a clip about that. This is an exchange on CNBC. First, you'll hear former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, and then the CNBC host, a conservative guy, Joe Kernan.
The Tony Fauci I saw in those emails is not the Tony Fauci I knew over the years. I mean, he was a guy who is sober, who is careful about his public appearances and his statements, was always very thoughtful.
Did you figure out the obsession with mainstream media in defending him, and Jake Tapper having multiple dinners and best friends, and what did that come from? And I know people around here that would call Tony Fauci a hero.
Okay, you heard a reference in there to Jake Tapper, a host at my former stomping grounds, CNN. In these published diaries, Fauci mentions Tapper a lot. Tapper interviewed him a bunch and sent him supportive messages. Apparently, at one point, Tapper got some questions from Fauci to use when Tapper was going to be interviewing a Trump official. And at one point, Fauci writes this: had dinner over Jake Tapper and Jen Tapper's home in D.C., terrific couple, friendship building. A listener sent me that. This gets at a very important journalistic issue: relationships with sources, relationships with people you interview. And it can get murky. You can have cordial relationships. You can message them sometimes and say, oh, I think you did a good job in that interview or something like that. But if you cross into friendship, you can no longer interview them, particularly about something controversial. If you're friends with someone who has, a new movie out and you're going to do a lighthearted interview about their new movie, fine. But when it's someone dealing with a very serious, controversial thing, if they are your friend, then you cannot be trusted to do a legitimate interview with them. Whether Jake Tapper saw himself as building a friendship with Fauci, we can't know. Jake Tapper's not alone in this. In these diaries, Fauci refers to another former colleague of mine at CNN, Dana Bash, sending him supportive messages and passing along a supportive message from Wolf Blitzer. People are rightfully wary of all this. People needed the media to be clear-eyed, to challenge Fauci, to consider that he could be wrong about things. And people have every reason to feel that this is a sign of the media being untrustworthy. What we have here in the big picture is the media making its own bed. If news giants were putting truth first always, giving you facts plus context, setting aside their own agendas to get you the information you need, then these would not be issues, because you would know that you could trust these news agencies to have strong policies and positions around all this stuff. More coming up on this. But first, he was in the final episode of The Office, and he spent a year in a major role in Wicked on Broadway. Now he's working to give people ignored by the media a place to tell their stories.
And now I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Josh Levs.
We are blessed to be able to have a speaker this evening who speaks with a lot of heart.
An outstanding author, a principled and groundbreaking journalist, a really engaging speaker and thinker.
Broadcaster, journalist, and host of They Stand Corrected, the podcast fact-checking the news. Thank goodness.
Josh spent 20 years reporting for NPR and CNN, where he developed unique expertise on nonpartisan fact-checking. He has been called Truth Seeker in Chief.
Josh has won multiple Peabody Awards, Murrow Awards,
and awards from the AP, from the Society of Professional Journalists, the National Association of Black Journalists, and more.
His book, All In, was published by HarperCollins and won the Nautilus Gold Award for promoting positive social change. He has spoken to the United Nations, Congress, Google.
And of course, I think is very cool, won a debate at Oxford.
He launched his podcast and newsletter called They Stand Corrected to provide listeners with the truth in a world of disinformation.
Clearly, he is a much-needed voice during these crazy times.
It's my pleasure to introduce Josh Levs to you today.
Please welcome.
Please join me in welcoming Josh Levs.
I love getting out there and meeting people like you. It's such a great opportunity to answer your questions and discover more about listeners to this show and potential listeners too. If you're interested in working out something in person or online, there's a form at my website, joshlevs.com. That's JOSHLEVS.com. You'll find a link in the show notes. Just click bookings. When news executives took to saying that they really want to represent minority groups in America fairly and accurately, most were not telling the truth. There was always an obvious exception. In recent years, news giants have worked to actively misrepresent Jewish Americans, who make up just about 2% of the country. As I've explained in previous episodes, these news giants rush to platform Jews who support anti Semitism, particularly AZHM, the antizionist hate movement. Jewish authors, entertainers, and activists who fuel that movement with lies are welcomed onto big media. They're the ones given space in the New York Times. They're interviewed on CNN and the BBC. They're on The Daily Show. They are tokens. Close to 0% of people involved in Jewish life support that hate movement. It's very low. The lived experiences of Jewish Americans generally go unrecognized and unreported in the media. Actor and singer Jonah Platt saw this problem, and he thought maybe if Jewish celebrities and other Jewish figures that people might recognize were to speak out about their experiences, people will be interested. So he created a show and called it Being Jewish.
I didn't see anybody having a conversation just about identity and culture and what it means to actually live as a Jew today.
And not just in terms of a show. Like, yes, in the media landscape, there wasn't a show exactly like it. But in general, when you're looking at who is interviewed, who does the op-eds, who is quoted. So people get this very skewed perception of who we are.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. It's one of our biggest issues is, most people on planet Earth have never met and will never meet a Jew. And the only thing they know is whatever 12 seconds of the news they catch or what they see in a movie or in a TV show or what they hear the pundits they listen to on podcasts or whatever saying about it. I mean, that is it. We have very few touch points.
Now, you are plugged into Hollywood. You've been on Broadway. You are in this community. So you probably understand better than I do what's going on in the Hollywood world that is making this hatred so popular.
It's really sort of a microcosm for the patterns we're seeing generally. Some of the most left of the lefties that we have work in Hollywood. But it's sort of the same way where most people are in the middle, right? They're sort of moderate. They're maybe not even paying attention to the issues. They're quiet. They're trying to do their jobs. They care about their careers, whatever. You have some people who are very much pro-Jewish, pro-Israel, and those people are sort of more bound together now than ever before. And then you have the people on the far left who are super loud, have fallen for all the same lies, and they just have a bigger platform. They have a bigger microphone than some of the regular folks. So we hear about it a lot more.
I'm jumping in here. The Hollywood media is a big part of the problem. Take Variety magazine, one of the leading Hollywood publications. They have been obsessively praising people who push the most vicious anti-Israel lies. Recently, they did a fawning interview with this woman, Melissa Barrera. She had starred in a Scream movie and then was dropped from another Scream movie, apparently, and dropped by her agency after she posted all kinds of crazy stuff following the October 7th massacres by Gazan terrorists in Israel. She basically just kept resharing so many anti-Semitic, anti-Israel conspiracy theories, totally nonsensical Hamas propaganda. But according to Variety, she was just calling for peace and criticizing the Israeli government's killing of Palestinian civilians. That's not what happened. Nowhere in this piece do they tell you the many, many crazy things she was posting while that tiny dot of a country was reeling from the most evil terrorist massacres of modern times. And she has continued to post ever since. One post that she has shared includes wild claims of death tolls. In the real world, the terrorists who control Gaza, this group known by its acronym Hamas, they are claiming that around 70,000 people were killed throughout the entire war. Well, she shared something that says it was about 10 times that, and that the vast majority were infants and children. Crazy stuff. Even Hamas is not saying anything like this. It gets worse. That post that she shared said Jews should never be allowed to have a state, ever. Can you imagine anyone in Hollywood sharing a post that says that about any other group? That is vile. But of course, Variety doesn't want you to know that because in their imaginary narrative, she is just being canceled for speaking out for civilians. Meanwhile, who's actually being canceled in the real world? There have been all kinds of events with Jewish entertainers being canceled, literally canceled. Places saying they just don't want to hear from that person, or the anti-Semitic activist groups are convincing the locations to cancel these events, or the locations claim they can't possibly provide enough security to do the event. And look at what happens to allies. The other day, former pop star Boy George dropped out of a big event in London. He was going to take part in these performances of Jesus Christ Superstar. He dropped out after sharing a song that supports the people of Israel. He experienced so much hatred, he had to drop out. He wrote that the man who has run his record label for years refused to release the song, so they parted ways. Now, he's not Jewish. Think about actors, performers who are and what they can face. Here is actress Jennifer Goodwin. She starred in a show called Once Upon a Time. This is her at a live event for Jonah's show. She was talking about the hatred that she experienced when she spoke out after October 7th.
In all of my trying to assimilate in Hollywood, and for all that I did to keep my head down, I just realized it was on October 10th when these words were used with me that I was like, no, I'm done. I'm done with this. I don't need to apologize for doing something like reposting what my Persian friends experienced escaping Iran in the 1980s. And, my husband and I had to have a lot of talks as I then continued to post. I was asked to post about the hostages. And we talked about what if I lose my career over this? Like, what if I become some kind of pariah because I am standing up for us? And it came down to yeah, okay, we would be okay if we lost the house and had to pull the kids out from school and all of these things, because the truth is there's only one way this goes where I can sleep at night.
She is sitting between actress Marlee Matlin, a deaf Jewish actress. Actually, I met her. We both just happened to be seated next to each other, signing books. She seemed real nice. And Josh Gad, a Broadway star and the voice of Olaf in Frozen. Jonah says that many people are trepidatious about coming on his show.
The way I describe it is, for those of your listeners who are familiar with Harry Potter, which I'm assuming is most, it's very much the experience of when the wizards need to go to Hogwarts. And to do so, they have to go through this platform 9 3/4. And what it looks like is a brick wall. So a lot of people see the brick wall and they go, that's terrifying. I'm not running face first in that brick wall. I'm out of here. And the people who are brave enough go through the wall. And on the other side, they find all their people. It's magical. I had one guest, he comes to mind, this guy named Seth Rudetsky, who's a Broadway personality. He started crying within seconds because he was like, I have not been able to talk about this openly, in a safe place, because my own community has turned on me. And this is what I tell them, you are going to mean so much to so many people.
What I have found is that there are people inside big media who are glad that I'm doing what I'm doing and also tell me their bosses are afraid. I'm guessing that there are people that are watching your show, that are listening to your show, but they don't want to be punished by the people that they are surrounded by in their communities.
Almost to a person, every time I get connected to a guest through a representative, it's almost a guarantee they're not coming on the show because they just don't want their client to touch anything.
It's so wild, though. The same PR folks, they don't see anything controversial about being interviewed about being Black, being interviewed about being Latino, being interviewed about being a Christian. Any of these things, they're all completely fine. It's just us and our existence that they instantly perceive as controversial.
So that's horrible. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're like, it's controversial to talk about Jewish stuff. So then the people don't talk about Jewish stuff because I guess it's controversial. But it isn't.
Have you looked at the history of Hollywood and how that community failed to stand up for or succeeded in standing up against anti-Semitism?
Brief Hollywood history. Hollywood essentially created by Eastern European Jewish immigrants.
Yeah, who couldn't get jobs elsewhere. Yeah.
Who couldn't get jobs elsewhere, were sort of allowed to carve out this niche in what was seen as, poor, gross consumption for the masses, and that none of the like rich East Coast folks wanted to touch. It's like, hey, go out in California and do your weird thing. And they wanted to be American. And so I understand why a Shmuel Goldfish would change his name to Samuel Goldwyn Pictures and like try to make great American films. Like they wanted to be part of this great nation. They wanted to write a new story for themselves, and they wanted to have the success. I get it. The problem is that legacy of sort of hide your Jewishness never got corrected. And so here we are almost 100 years later, and we're still hiding and still trying to distance ourselves. And I think to our own detriment, often overcorrecting, overcompensating. It's like, oh, I can't tell a Jewish story. They're going to say I run the media. Blah, blah, blah. They say all that crap anyways.
Some folks are doing that, are willing to tell stories about Jewish people, not just in a way that you reference once in a while as a joke on a sitcom, but in a deeper way. Jonah and I talked about a few, including a stage play that he took part in at Carnegie Hall earlier this year. It was a benefit for a kibbutz destroyed on October 7th.
Amy Schumer was in it. David Schwimmer was in it. David Draymond from Disturbed was in it. A lot of great actors and performers.
A listener to my show told me about this show, Boston Blue, and I've started watching it now. It centers on a Black Jewish family, and in each episode, they have Shabbos dinner.
Whoa, I never heard of that.
Yeah, I hadn't either. It's a spin-off of this show that was apparently on for 14 years called Blue Bloods with Tom Selleck.
Yeah, I mean, Boston Blue, it's a cop show, but a Black Jewish family cop show?
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
That's very cool. I had no idea.
And the Black Jewish cop wears a chai. She wears a chai all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, this is my new favorite show. It's actually shocking to see. And it's successful, which is a sign. It does not have to be, like a business killer.
Look at Nobody Wants This. It's like a global hit comedy for Netflix. It's all about how great Judaism is and how we're going to like make Kristen Bell into a Jew. It's awesome.
By the way, over at Variety, I don't see any mention of that star-studded event at Carnegie Hall, even though they've covered lots of other stuff at Carnegie Hall. The New York Times didn't cover it either, even though it was right there in New York. And while both of these outlets have spent years running hundreds of stories about the need for diversity in entertainment, and specifically the need to represent the breadth and diversity of Black American experiences, neither of these outlets has ever mentioned that Boston Blue centers on a Black Jewish family. I'll be right back. $19 million U.S. students are headed to colleges and universities over the next few weeks. Those institutions should teach kids ethical leadership by example. They should be sites of healthy dialogue and respect and decency and enforcement of rules. Instead, many of these institutions have turned into hotbeds of radicalism and violence in which horrific actions are permitted and even celebrated as long as the targets are the media's favorite villains. That makes these environments dangerous for everyone. A great organization is fighting back, and all the folks there ask is that you get their free emails. That's it. That's how you quote-unquote join, by signing up for free emails so you can learn about what they do. And thanks to a limited time sponsorship, you will help support They Stand Corrected. It only works if you use the special link they gave me for you. So go to the show notes or the newsletter right now and click that short link, type in your email address, and you'll help make the next episode of They Stand Corrected possible. Thank you. When news agencies lead by agenda rather than basic journalistic standards, we all pay a price. Anthony Fauci is paying a price. There are people right now pointing out accurately that certain right-wing figures, including Rand Paul, have been after Fauci for a long time, and now they're trying to destroy him, shame him. That is part of what's happening, along with everything else I talked about earlier. big mainstream news outlets did also fail to challenge him in important ways during COVID. And not just him, he was an advisor, failed to challenge some of the leading scientific voices. Recognizing all of this requires breaking apart those triangles, the victim, villain, hero drama triangles that get instilled in our minds through all this news coverage. The same goes with rising anti-Semitism. People have been fed crazy narratives of all-powerful Jewish villains and perfect, innocent Arab Palestinians and their supporters as victims. In that madness, what better way for someone to feel like a hero than running out and attacking Jewish people? The media should work actively to dismantle those paradigms through the power of truth by being consistently accurate, consistently committed to delivering facts plus context. News agencies could win back Americans and earn their trust. But those drama triangles sell. And by constantly pushing them and ignoring everything that contradicts them, news giants are selling out. This is how today's media works. As always, I want to know what you think. There are two great ways to be in touch. The best is through the newsletter, and the second is through a form at my website. Oh, I have great videos for you in the newsletter. Jonah and his brothers, Ben Platt, who's a Broadway and movie actor and star, and Henry Platt, who has the voice of an angel. These are three super talented brothers. They all sing together. Actually, they had a video that went viral during COVID that they recorded for a Jewish event their mom was doing. It got millions of views from all kinds of people. It's in Hebrew and about love. Plus, I have the Boy George song for you that dared to speak truth to power just the other day. Check those out. Before you go, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, all those good things. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week.